Are you being duped by the beauty brands? Just because a cosmetics company says that they're cruelty-free does not necessarily mean that they are. So when can you trust it and when do you not? We're going to talk about it today. 5 mistakes you might be making when you assume that a beauty brand is cruelty-free. I'm going to share a guide with you guys today to arm and equip you to be able to spot it instantly when a beauty brand is lying to you. We're going to share all the resources you can check, where to turn for your information. You're going to know the laws. You're going to understand some of these nitty-gritty little nuances, all in the world of cruelty-free beauty and a little bit delving into vegan beauty as well. So if that interests you, stick around. I am so excited to finally be able to kind of kick off this series. We'll talk about it. Stick around and we're going to dive right on into it. So welcome. If you're new here, I am Cher. So I feel like we need to first have this video as kind of a step 1 introduction into cruelty-free so that you will understand some of these different details that I think are going to play into when I bring other topics on here. Because one of the things I really want to be sharing with you guys this year is my favorite products that are cruelty-free. And when I have products that I love and I'm giving up this year, I want to be able to bring you guys like the dupes of products that are similar to that can replace it, that are a cruelty-free alternative. That's going to really be my focus. But I feel like we need a basic understanding of what is really cruelty-free first. So let's start digging in. I talked about the 5 mistakes you might be making when assuming that a brand is cruelty-free. So the first mistake that we're going to talk about is not verifying your sources. What I think we all tend to do is if we kind of want to know something about anything out there, whether it's beauty or something else, we pull out our phone and we type into Google and we say, I don't know, is this product cruelty-free? And we let Siri tell us if it's cruelty-free or not. This isn't necessarily the best way to figure out if it's cruelty-free. Yes, it's a quick, instant results kind of thing when you don't have time to go dig and get your info. But sometimes they can give you the wrong information. This is because, number one, we have AI robots out there these days. And AI, it can be a wonderful thing or it can be a terrible thing. There's a lot of misinformation out there with the use of AI. That's kind of becoming more and more of a concern. When you go to look something up on Google, one of the first things you'll see is that little AI robot giving you a little quick summary. They've gone out there on the internet and they kind of generate something for you. It isn't necessarily to be trusted. Sometimes they give people wrong information. And I'm telling you this, not just in beauty, that's everywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, don't just take an AI bot's word for it. Go find out, dig a little further, unfortunately. So we are going to talk about what sources can you actually trust. And I'm going to give you kind of a list of your top ones that are good information for really having verified these brands and companies. So another reason why you want to verify with those particular trusted sources is because of another mistake that we're making that we'll get into in a moment, but there's different parts of cruelty-free. You could be cruelty-free in one area and not in another. And sometimes the internet or even other sources, just, local sources or something, will say that something's cruelty-free because maybe they meet 2 out of the 3 criteria. They haven't checked into it as a whole. So looking into sources that have verified and audited and actually go and research the claims of these companies, like audits are key, okay? Audits. So remember that, an audit, that's important. But basically going straight to sources that have run these checks and verified things, audited these brands and companies, and have looked at it as the whole of all the moving parts that we're going to talk about. That's why it's important to check those trusted sources. So let's chat about what are the sources you can trust right off the bat. Let's go for that list. I want to give you these resources. Probably my number 1 source that I really love, Cruelty-Free Kitty. Okay, so Cruelty Free Kitty has a website as well as an Instagram page. It's on like social media and all of that. And it's basically an entire list of like all the companies that they have truly like researched, verified, and all of that, done their due diligence and checked. And they give you that list. You can just look up a specific company and tell whether they're cruelty free or not. And so it's kind of a running list. And then ever so often they will update on their other social media and those places too. I'm going to put some of these resources I'm telling you guys about down in my caption too, so you have a list there. But Cruelty Free Kitty, basically, I think it's crueltyfreekitty.org or com, I think. That is a great source of information. It's just all of the lists, and they can tell you yes or no, and they kind of tell you why and what they've kind of verified. So number one, that's a great resource, and I use that one because I know it's just a quick way I can like look it up on the list. There's also another one I forgot about too, and that's Ethical Elephant. I think it's ethicalelephant.com or org. Again, I'll put this in the caption too for you to have these resources, but that's another great guide too. They give a lot of information as well, and they also sometimes share and verify which products are which. So another good one, I think, that gives you some accurate information. But then there's certification programs. There's actual certificates that you can get. And so I think everybody's kind of heard of most of these probably. Maybe one that you might not have, but I think there's probably a couple you know. And so why do we want to check if something's certified? When you have that, when you see that little logo or that certification or whatever, it's just that if you know all the criteria that that program is looking at in checking and auditing all of these brands, then you know they've done all that work for you. You know that they're a trustworthy site. So just seeing that logo is like a very quick way to know, okay, well, I know that if this group has approved them, they must be cruelty-free for sure, or vegan, or whatever you're looking for. And it's the same with, there's some that certify for whether a product is green or not. Like if they are, have sustainable packaging. You have the B Corp, which is a really hard status to get to, for like clean brands. If they leave out certain ingredients, they have a very strict list of ingredients that's left out. So there's all different types of certification programs out there. But I'm going to be sharing more of the ones that will tell you if they're cruelty free or not and what each of these programs looks at. So there's 4 main programs that I can think of and that are probably your top ones to really tell you this. The first one I think we all know is PETA. And, I think PETA sometimes gets a bad rap too because, in the world of cruelty-free and of vegan, it's kind of a personal decision for everybody on how strict they're going to get. Some are like, well, I think if we just in general try to move towards doing as good as we can, versus some who are like, absolutely, no, I don't touch this and this and that. And, so I think sometimes PETA, like, they're very, very strict, and, they don't give a lot of allowances for any like gray area sometimes, I think. And so sometimes they can be associated with extremist views on things. And I don't want to get into like the politics and all of that. But they have an excellent program to tell you. And they're a great way for me to know, okay, if PETA has signed off on this, I think we're pretty good because they are so strict. So what they have is 2 different things they look at. One is whether they're cruelty-free, and the other is if they're cruelty-free and vegan. We're going to talk about that too in another point, okay? But I'm just going to share what PETA is looking at first. So they have the Global Animal Test-Free certification. So that tells you, is it cruelty-free? And then they have the Animal Test-Free and Vegan certification. So cruelty-free is if they're testing on animals, and vegan is if it's products made with animal products, okay, or ingredients. And so like, I'm just a new, like, recent convert. I'm a new vegan. So I've been eating nothing with animals, and some vegans are more strict than others. Now, when it comes to your cosmetics, though, it's more if your cosmetics are not made with this. And maybe there's some vegans who are you know, it's in their clothing, it's in like everything they do, their personal care. Now I'm more vegan in food, and then I'm cruelty-free in my products. But vegan is a bonus, you know, for me. But those who are being strictly vegan on like everything, some are so strict that they're going to leave out things like honey. So anything made with from bees. So anything with wax, like the bees wax, and honey and carmine. So even going that far. So PETA does not consider it vegan if it includes those things too. And that's the gray area for a lot of people. Like some vegans still do honey and wax and some don't. So, but PETA will go on the stricter side usually. Okay. Also, PETA tends to look at the brand level. So there is a difference in some of these certifications. Some of them are going to give a designation based on a product. So they might certify the product itself, but not the whole brand. PETA looks at the brand level. So that means that if some companies will make quite a few vegan products, but not everything is vegan. So there might be a certification that does more based on just those particular products they made. But PETA, if you make any products that are not vegan, you're not getting that vegan certification. And then they're also pretty strict about where you sell. They're going to look at like the whole picture, all these little pieces of parts that I talked about before. And if you don't meet that and you're selling in a region that requires you to, and testing there, which we'll talk about in a minute too, then they're only going to give you a certification of working for regulatory change, but you're not going to get the full certification. So that's kind of how PETA works with their program. They have the Beauty Without Bunnies program is theirs. So, and of course they have a website and resources and all of that. I will put that down below. And then that brings us to the second certification program, and that is Leaping Bunny. So I think a lot of people know Leaping Bunny as well, hopefully. You've probably seen that one too. Now, Leaping Bunny is from Cruelty-Free International. And what is really neat about Leaping Bunny is they actually have an app, guys. So if you download their app, this is another resource similar to Cruelty-Free Kitty, where you can, at any time, if you have a product or a brand you're wondering about, you can look it up quickly on their app and see if they're cruelty-free or not according to their certification. You can also scan the barcode on products. So if you're in the store, you want to scan the barcode on it, that app will allow you to pop it up really quickly to see if it's cruelty-free or not. So fantastic program. I love this. I wanted to tell you guys about that app. So this is like their little shopping guide they've put together. And Leaping Bunny is probably the best one out there as far as verifying and really auditing and double checking all of these things. So they're probably the best known for that they are probably your number one like audit program, best like shopping guide. And of course, Leaping Bunny does this too, not just for cosmetics, but also for like personal care, household products, all of those. So they're just kind of like overall, but they're a great guide for in the beauty community too. All right, the next one is the Nature Watch Foundation, and this is very similar to the Leaping Bunny. They also have a shopping guide out there. It's available online. It's been around for a long time, and so they also verify and update which ones are truly cruelty-free, and they are very like whole group oriented, and they look at the brand, not just products. And then the fourth one to tell you about is the Vegan Society. Now, they look at both vegan and cruelty-free. So I figured I'd still mention, even though this is a program that's both. So they're kind of taking just kind of a holistic look overall, keeping you up to date on like advocacy and laws and whatnot. They're also letting you know which companies are cruelty-free and vegan. But with them, they're only looking at the product level, not at the full brand. Now, I will say that sometimes where it gets hard to really verify the sources and where it can be a little unfair maybe to the smaller brands and stuff is when you have new brands and small brands coming on board. They don't tend to always have a certification yet. They haven't had some of these sites check them yet because they're not the big well-known brands yet. So it is harder to really identify small brands. And of course, those are the ones we want to support. And, you know, these mom and pop startup companies and whatnot who have a heart and a mission to be cruelty-free or vegan or both. And, you know, we want to support them. So there are definitely exceptions where they may not have a certification yet. It can kind of really come down to like diving deep on their website, really looking at their info and seeing like, do they specifically say some of these other details we're going to talk about in a few minutes. So you can dig further that way instead if they're not yet, you know, being recognized by these bigger like labels and whatnot. Okay, so those were just a rundown of sites, certifications, some good sources for you. I also want to mention that sometimes these brands will put a little logo on their products to make it look like these other logos. They'll steal the PETA and the Leaping Bunny little logos and little, you know, cute little critters on there so that you think and automatically associate it with those certifications when they're really not sponsored by them. So get to know the true look of the logo. And Ethical Elephant actually has a page on this too, so that you can kind of memorize and really know when you're being duped. So that's another thing. They will do that. These brands are sketchy. All right, let's move on to mistake number 2. Assuming that a brand that is cruelty-free locally is technically still cruelty-free everywhere. All right, what I mean by this is a big one, guys. This is really big because I don't know if everybody knows this. And so I think the biggest pitfall people kind of fall into when they do believe a company is cruelty-free is, you know, there may be one that wants to be cruelty-free and they are like here in the US or whatever country you're in maybe. And so for the most part, no, they don't test on animals here. However, if they sell in a market in a country that has laws that require them to do animal testing, they're not cruelty-free. So the biggest example of this probably of all is China. If they sell in the Chinese market, guys, they are not cruelty-free because they automatically have to test on animals there required by Chinese law. Also Russia. So Russia does require some animal testing as well, but I think China's the big one because, come on, everything's made in China. Okay, now there is a difference though between made in China and sold in China. So this is where confusion comes into. You can make something in China. You can have some ingredients that go into your product in China. You can have the full product. You can make it there, have plants there, what have you. It's when, and you could still be cruelty-free. But it's when you enter the Chinese market and you start setting up and selling there to their customers, their wholesale, their whoever, they are required to have done animal testing first before they can sell to those customers. Okay, so that is the big one. So there's a lot of brands that will say, you can read it on their websites, they'll say they're cruelty-free, but they'll have a little disclaimer in like the fine small print with a little asterisk that says, except where required by law. That means they're selling in China, most likely. So that's the big kicker. And so, yeah, you want to be verifying not just that they're cruelty-free here, but that they're cruelty-free everywhere. And so, you know, looking at some of these certifications and getting to know with like which ones are going to still let them get a certification to if they're selling in those markets versus are they not going to give them that certification for that. So there's been a lot of brands that have claimed they're cruelty-free when they're really not, with that being the hang-up. There's been a lot of influencers who have gone out there and claimed for the brand, representing the brand, that they are cruelty-free when they are not. And sometimes maybe the influencer doesn't even know. They may not even know this little piece. So, but this is a big one, guys. This is why there's a lot of confusion, I think. All right, and then that brings me to mistake number 3, which is not verifying all of the parts are cruelty-free. Third parties, parent companies, ingredients level, you name it, suppliers, the whole shebang. So, there's a lot of pieces that go into making a product, selling a product. So you might have a brand that's cruelty-free, but their parent company is not. So L'Oreal owns everybody, right? So always check on a sub-brand under a big parent brand and check, okay, like L'Oreal owns like so many different companies. And so it may be that one of those sub companies, little umbrellas, are indeed cruelty-free in and of themselves, but the parent company that owns them and profits from them is not. And I guess it also kind of goes to like, how strict do you want to get? Some of this does come down to your personal values and like how stringent you're going to be also. But I want you to have the full facts that there's other things to think about. Parent companies, also the suppliers, like your third-party suppliers. It may be that you're trying to make your immediate direct pieces and parts of this product cruelty-free or vegan or what have you, but there may be a part of it from a supplier that they're not, So like, how far do you want to go and how far do you want to go down the supply chain? Looking at all of the pieces, the whole entire like product from start to finish. All right, mistake number 4, assuming that because it is vegan, that it is cruelty-free. I think this is a big one. A lot of people tend to assume automatically, oh, it's vegan. Okay, we're good. It could be a vegan product and still not be cruelty-free. Now, you do tend to see vegan brands more. Usually they kind of go hand in hand, but it isn't necessarily always the case, because vegan is going to be more, is it made with actual animal products? Did the ingredients, come from animals? Is there anything in it that has animal pieces? But it may still be that they still tested that product on an animal. It may be that it was vegan, but now you're going to go enter the Chinese market and now you got to go test on animals. So always double check and make sure, just because it's vegan doesn't mean it's cruelty-free. All right, and then the 5th and final mistake we're going to talk about is making the assumption that just because they're in the EU or some area where there is an animal testing ban does not necessarily mean that you're safe and that you don't still need to check and verify. Like I mentioned, the European Union is an example. They did have a ban on animal testing since 2004 on finished products. And then they came back in 2009, updated that on ingredients as well. So those are, your European countries basically that are part of the EU. And there's also other countries as well that have bans. We have Switzerland, we have Norway, Iceland, Canada, Brazil, and Colombia, which is great, which is progress, wonderful. Come on, US, bro. Bro. But anyways, I sound like my kids, bro. Everything's bruh and bro. If you're a mom, Anyway, but there are major loopholes on this and, areas where they can get around. There's gray areas, basically. So they have 3 exceptions, basically, to the ban in the EU, for example, if there's major health concerns. Also, if there's major safety concerns, like say workers that are working with the products, if there's major concerns for their safety. And then also, if it's a product that's so widely used, it's just like really hard to replace. So these are pretty big like loopholes, you know what I mean? So it's not necessarily always going to be the case that it truly is cruelty-free. Then it could, this company could kind of get around that a little bit through any of those little loopholes. So just wanted to kind of educate you there on that as well. I think that's kind of all the mistakes or topics I wanted to cover to just really educate you and dive a lot deeper into the details behind a cruelty-free status and how to know if you're being duped or not. I don't want you to be fooled. I want you to be armed with the complete knowledge to really be able to tell for yourself and be a good detective and know, okay, this is, I am pretty sure, cruelty-free. And how far you want to go with it, that is your personal choice and your decision. But kind of knowing all of these details will at least give you the knowledge, you know, to make that decision for you and how stringent you want to be. I think that any progress is great progress. And yeah, so let me know, guys, if this was helpful to you. We are going to continue down this path a lot more. Like I said, I really want to bring you a lot of favorite beauty products that are cruelty-free and dupes. We're going to be talking a lot about that and lots of reviews and more topics like this too that are educational. So you'll definitely want to stick around if you were on board with that, if this is your vibe. And of course, all the other reviews that we do here, we're still looking through it all through the cruelty-free lens though. So love you guys. Thanks for watching. Pop that subscribe so you don't miss more of it in the future. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye.